Welcome to Eggs and Issues, a monthly business forum presented by the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce, bringing timely economic discussion to the region for nearly 40 years. Thank you to our sponsors and partners. Presenting sponsors, Martins Point Healthcare, Bernstein Scher, and Central Maine Power. Cooperating sponsors, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare and Bank of America. Reception sponsors, Clark Insurance, Key Bank, and Pretty Flaherty. Community Corner sponsor, Goral Palmer. Tomorrow's leaders and entrepreneurs sponsors, AAA Northern New England and ProSearch. Coffee sponsor, Skowhegan Savings. Parking sponsor, M People Credit Union. Photography sponsor, Wohler & Company. Media partners, radio sponsor, WGAN. Print sponsor, Maine Trust for Local News. TV sponsor, WMTW Maine CW. Business news sponsor, Maine Biz. Venue partner, University of Southern Maine. And thank you to our special community partners, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, Kennebec Savings Bank, MEMIC, Spectrum Healthcare Partners, Southern Maine Community College, and the University of Southern Maine. And now, please welcome Portland Community Chamber President, Mary Costigan.
Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you've all adjusted very quickly to the time change and you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed this morning. My name is Mary Costigan. I'm a shareholder at Bernstein Scher, and I'm honored to serve as the volunteer president of the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce. So welcome to Eggs and Issues. Today's topic is childcare, the workforce behind the workforce. We'll invite industry professionals to the stage to provide us with updates on Maine's childcare crisis before engaging in a moderated discussion where they'll dive into innovative strategies, real-world success stories, and actionable steps businesses are taking to support working parents, attract top talent, and drive economic growth. Today's panelists are Kim Russell with Educate Maine, Michael McKernan with Jackson Laboratories, Kylie Sear from General Dynamics Bath Iron Works, and Dan Coyne from United Way of Southern Maine. Before I invite our panelists to the stage, I want to thank all of our sponsors of Eggs and Issues who make this event possible for the entire season. Without our sponsors' support of Eggs and Issues, the Chamber would not deliver the high-quality speakers, panels, and presentations you've come to expect, so thank you to the sponsors. I'd like to extend a very sincere thank you to our special community partners. These businesses and organizations support not just Eggs and Issues, but all of the 70+ events that the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce produces throughout the year. Speaking of events, we have a very exciting event taking place here at USM next week. It's not in this building, it's in the McGoldrick Center across the way. The event we are hosting is called We Rock. It's our second annual event. It's on Wednesday, March 19th at 4:30. So please mark your calendars. It's in its second year, and this event is a great opportunity to network and celebrate award-winning female professionals and organizations who empower, inspire, and unite the Portland region. Now, it may be an award ceremony for women, but all are invited, so please come. Next week, we are honoring Senator Jill Dewson, who is here, but I think she skipped out of the room, Maine State Senator with the She Empowers Award. Emma Tiedemann from Portland Sea Dogs is receiving the She Inspires Award, and Jean Hewlett from Maine Community Bank is receiving the She Unites Award. So you can register at portlandregion.com, and we hope to see you there. It's a really, really fun event. Now on to our Community Corner. At each Eggs and Issues, we highlight a local nonprofit that is making a positive impact in our community. Today's Community Corner is American Red Cross of Southern Maine. The mission of the American Red Cross is to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies by mobilizing the power of volunteers and the generosity of donors. The American Red Cross is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that depends on the generosity of American people to provide life-saving services to our neighbors down the street, across the country, and around the world. The Red Cross provides many public-facing programs and services nationwide, including our shared communities of Southern Maine. These services include collecting life-saving blood and blood products to help those facing medical emergencies and diseases like cancer. The Red Cross collects 40% of the U.S. blood supply and serves more than 25 hospitals, including Maine Medical Center here in Portland. There's no substitute for blood and no way to collect it other than from generous donors in our community. I'm a proud donor, O negative. They love me there. If you are not a regular donor, it's super easy, so try it. The Red Cross also responds to disasters, small and large, from mass care services like sheltering and feeding to one-to-one support for families after home fires. The Red Cross proudly responds to hundreds of disasters across Maine every year. These services and more are carried out by more than 600 volunteers in Maine who answer the call on their neighbors' worst days. As a 501c3, the Red Cross needs our support to respond to emergencies. Visit redcross.org to learn more, to make an appointment to donate life-saving blood, lend your support to our humanitarian mission, or become a volunteer to those in need. Board members from the American Red Cross of Southern Maine are here with us this morning. Please stand and be recognized. Make sure if you haven't already, please visit their table outside before you leave. Our Tomorrow's Leaders and Entrepreneurs program allows area high school, technical school, university, and college students to attend all Exit Issues events at no cost. Do we have any students with us today? And if so, please stand and be recognized. Quick reminder about parking. You probably saw the QR code on your way in. Just make sure to enter that info before you leave because it's kind of it's an automatic camera system. It'll pick up your car. So just be sure to do that. If you need any help, there's folks outside who will help you. Now on to today's program. I would like to welcome to the stage President and CEO of the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce, Quincy Hensel, along with today's panelists, Kim Russell, Michael McKernan, Kylie Sear, and Dan Coyne.
Just let me kick it right off?
Kick it right
all
off.
So thank you all for coming this morning. My name is Kim Russell. I'm with Educate Maine, and I run a statewide organization of business leaders called Ready Nation that look at early education programs and policies and how we can help improve the economy of our state. So Quincy has asked me this morning to cover 3 topics. One is the economic cost of Maine's childcare crisis. 2, the current policy initiatives and what's going on in the state budget around childcare. And then 3, a very quick overview of the childcare workforce in Maine. It's a lot of materials. I'm going to try to run through these slides pretty quickly. And you all can see the slide? Yeah. There's also a QR code that has the slides for you if you'd like. So first off, when we want to grow Maine's economy, what's one of the best things we can do? We need to fix Maine's childcare crisis. This is a photo of Quincy at a press conference we did back in June of 2023, where we released a research report talking about what the childcare crisis costs Maine's economy every year. And it's huge. It's $403 million. So how we came up with these numbers, my organization did a national survey of parents, 800 parents, of children just ages birth through age 3, so the youngest kiddos that need childcare. And we asked parents questions about the childcare challenges and how it impacted their work performance on 4 dimensions: productivity, time at work, disruptions at work, and career pathways. And then we hired national economists to take that data and monitorize it, tell us what this is costing our economy. So here's what we found. We asked all these parents, again, moms and dads, babies to age 3, as a result of childcare problems in the past 3 months, have you ever been late to work? 64% had. 64% had to leave work early. 58% missed a full day of work. 53% have been distracted at work, and 44% missed part of a work shift. We asked, have you ever, as a result of childcare problems, have you ever had to reduce your work hours? 44% had. Had you had your pay or hours reduced? 37% had. Changed from full-time work to part-time work? 33% had. As a result of childcare problems, have you ever been reprimanded by work? Been reprimanded by a supervisor at work? 30% had. Quit a job? 26% had. 23% been late to work or been let go from work assignment or been fired, and 17% have been been demoted or transferred to a less desirable position. And then we talked to parents about childcare problems and they're diminishing their career pathways. 41% turned down a new job offer. 36% turned down future education and training. 33% had problems participating in workforce training. And 28% turned down a promotion or a reassignment. And so what does that cost? It costs the economy tremendously. As I said, $403 million a year here in Maine, $122 billion nationally, because it hurts the parents, it hurts the businesses, and it hurts the taxpayers. It hurts the individual parents because of lost wages, lost productivity, extra time and cost looking for another job, and lost earnings for their future. It hurts the businesses because you've got lost revenues, less productivity, more time spent on absenteeism, disruptions, retraining, and then it hurts taxpayers. It's less tax money on the state, local, and federal level. And again, our report shows that this costs Maine's economy $403 million a year. So now Quincy's asked me to talk a little bit about what the legislature's done to address the child care crisis in recent years and what the current budget is proposing to do. So during the pandemic, it became really clear that child care was a huge workforce barrier. And so the state used some federal relief money to put in place a wage supplement for every child care worker that was $200 a month. And that at the time, child care workers were making, this is back in 21, an average of $13.90 an hour. So I want to talk a little bit about just how low paid child care workers are, because I don't think people realize that. With this $200 a month stipend, their average hourly wage went up to $15.15. And then 2021, Speaker Ryan Fecteau wanted to make that $200 a month wage supplement permanent with general fund money. And so he put in a bill that did that, and it passed. And that was really the first major investment the state of Maine has made in childcare, and that was $15 million. Prior to that, the only investment Maine made was childcare for foster kiddos, and it was really small, $1.5 million a year. Then in 2023, then Senate President Troy Jackson had a bill that was very comprehensive and did a number of things to help the childcare industry, one of which was to double that wage stipend from $15 million to $30 million as for an investment, and then he tiered it. So based on people's experience and training and credentials, they would get, their wage supplement would be a little bit higher based on what they brought to the table. And that changed the average wage from $15.15 an hour to $16.40 an hour. And that's what it is today. I'll try not to make editorial comments, but the Governor Mills has proposed in her next 26-27 budget that she wants to eliminate $15 million from the second wage stipend for childcare workers. So if enacted, that will move childcare workers back to an average salary of $15.15 an hour. Is anyone in the room have people that work for you that works for $15.15 an hour? Does anybody in the room have anyone that works for you for $16.40 an hour? In addition to cutting the wage stipend supplement, Governor Mills' budget proposes eliminating a new program, which is a scholarship program for child care workers' children. So if you're a child care worker and you're making $16.40 an hour and you have children that need child care, the state, under the Jackson bill, put in place a scholarship program to help you pay for your child care. The governor's proposing to eliminate that program. And she's also proposing to cut back $3.6 million in general fund money for Head Start. Head Start is a high-quality early education and learning program for our poorest and most at-risk kids that are poverty and below. And if this cut happens, then 250 of Maine's poorest children will be kicked out of Head Start programs across the 11 Head Start programs in our state. So the third thing Quincy asked me to talk about was what the child care workforce looks like in Maine today. So there's a number of slides that talk about this. 60% of our child care educators are younger than age 40. Part of what we saw in the pandemic is that a lot of more senior child care workers, teachers left the field. So like every sector has a cyclical cycle of the workers. And right now in Maine, the child care workers tend to be younger. 93% of early educators are women and 93% are white. 48% of early childhood early childcare educators have under 5 years of experience. Again, they're younger and they have less experience. 48% of them have an associate's degree or higher. And again, we're going to talk about salary because I think this is really important, particularly when we're talking about cutting their wages. So the annual wage for a childcare educator in Maine is $16.41 an hour, which equals $34,150 a year. Compare that to a brand new teacher going to work in Maine at $40,000 a year, or the average teacher salary in Maine, which is $16,500 and change. Now in 2024, there were about 7,400 people working in childcare. Remember we talked about those tiers that were put in place in the Jackson bill? So most of those, 5,000, are at tier 1. Those are people relatively new in the field, been in the field less than 2 years, or just starting to get their initial credential and maybe working toward an associate's degree. Tier 2 is folks that have associate's degrees or a brand new bachelor's degree and are new to the field, and their wage supplement is $340 a month. Now, tier 3 is $540 a month, but that's people that have a bachelor's degree and at least 5 years of experience, or a master's degree, or a PhD. Now, I'm not a great at math, but you take that 540 times 12, it's 6,400, add it to the 34,150, and you've got people with a bachelor's degree and 5 years experience, masters and PhDs, who are making under $41,000 a year. Anyone in the room have someone working with them with those credentials for $41,000 a year? Here, Bill does because he runs childcare. So here's what we know. Here's our takeaways. People that work in the childcare, they go into childcare not to make money, but because they're very passionate about this field. They make low wages, they're relatively young, and they're inexperienced. We don't have any data on turnover because the state doesn't collect it. There's a whole lot of data the state doesn't collect around childcare, but that's a different issue for a different day. When you look at a report for the 2024 Early Childhood Workforce Index from the Center of the Study of Childcare Employment, if you look at the childcare sector as a sector of our economy nationally, people working in childcare make in the bottom 3%. Said another way, 97% of all workers in our country make more than childcare workers. Think about the job we ask them to do every day and let that sink in for just a minute. Childcare is the workforce behind every other workforce in Maine. It's incredibly meaningful, it's intensive, it benefits families, it benefits businesses, and it benefits our communities. The wages are just not commensurate with the job we're asking these people to do.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I know that was a lot.
Well, no, it is a lot, but you did an incredible job of really kind of explaining the issue and highlighting the challenges that we're facing. Kim has been an incredible resource for our organization and a whole host of other organizations and advocates around childcare, and we've been I think a very strong and active supporter of Ready Nation for years. So we're so grateful to have you here today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like to quickly introduce the rest of our panel, and then we're going to have a panel discussion, and then we are definitely going to open this up to Q&A from all of you. So if a question comes up, kind of bookmark it, and we'll get to it towards the end of the program. But with us, we have Mike McKernan from Jackson Labs, Kylie Sear from Bath Iron Works, and Dan Coyne from the United Way of Southern Maine. And just a side note, I've had the great privilege to work with Dan for years at the Chamber and the United Way, but now he is in a new role at the United Way, and that is CEO of the United Way of Southern Maine. So this is his first public appearance in his new role. He is stepping in for Liz Cotter-Schlacks, who recently stepped away from the United Way. She was just an incredible partner of ours, and Dan has been as well. And so thank you, congratulations, and thank you for being here.
I wouldn't be anywhere else but today, so thank you.
Thank you. Let's start. I'm going to start with Mike and with Jackson Labs. So Jackson Labs really took the child care issue head on, and they built a child care facility for their employees. Our organization, our board, was so impressed with the fact that they built child care. They also built housing for their employees that we took a board field trip up to see you guys about 1.5 years ago, and it was just incredibly impressive. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about, what motivated Jackson Labs to invest directly in childcare, And how does your partnership with the YMCA function for both the employer's perspective and the employee's perspective?
Sure, and thank you very much for the invitation to join this really remarkable panel. So the reason why the Jackson Laboratory invested in childcare was to advance our mission. So if you don't know, the Jackson Laboratory is one of the largest employers in the state of Maine. I think today we're 13th or 14th, but it's to drive the mission of basic discovery and genetics of human disease. And that includes diseases that disproportionately affect many of our neighbors in the state of Maine, from Alzheimer's disease to cancer being the leading cause of death in the state, to rare diseases, which impact 1 in 10 people, remarkably, even though they're quite rare individually. So that mission means that we need a both talented and, to the data you just shared, an available workforce to show up every day to pursue their passion and the mission of the institution. And so for that, in order to ensure the availability and the desirability of working at JAX, and that includes our locations in Bar Harbor and Ellsworth primarily, we've invested pretty heavily into items that contribute to the employee experience, and that includes housing, transportation, and more recently, childcare. So to get right to the point, childcare is a story at JAX that started in 2017. We initially invested almost $2 million into the renovation of what was at the time an old plumbing shop in Ellsworth. And we renovated that facility in, again, 2017. And we then partnered with the Downey's Family YMCA in Ellsworth, who to this day is the operator. So that facility was so successful and so needed that we discovered that employees who were based in Bar Harbor were doing what we at the time called a reverse commute. So they are living in Bar Harbor, working in Bar Harbor, they'd commute to Ellsworth, drop off the kids and come back. I think today we just call that dropping the kids off at childcare. It's kind of no longer seems like a remarkable thing that you would need to drive almost a half an hour one way and then half an hour go back. But in 2017, that was a big deal. So that was a big success. And then the Jackson Laboratory employees based in Bar Harbor were asking the question, okay, fantastic for Ellsworth, we need some resources here too, because the local centers in Bar Harbor weren't growing or planning to grow. So through a series of employee discussions, lots of surveys, lots of internal prioritization of discretionary, institutional funds, the decision was made to construct a new facility to the tune of about $6 million in Bar Harbor. And again, we decided to partner with the Downey's Family YMCA, since they were have been such a great partner in Ellsworth. And that opened in about a year ago, just over a year ago, on our site.
That's great. Thank you
Sure.
for sharing that. Excuse me, Kylie. So Bath Iron Works has faced similar challenges in terms of identifying the needed workforce, especially as you've been scaling up shipbuilding. So if you could walk us through your project, why you chose also to partner with the YMCA, and how do you anticipate this offering to impact your ability to hire and to retain workers?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning. For those of you who don't know what Bath Iron Works does, we build the DDG-51 Arleigh Burke class destroyers. We employ around 6,800 employees, 43 of those being in our manufacturing setting. We've got representation from all counties in the state of Maine, and we're the largest manufacturing company in the state, making up about 12% of the manufacturing workforce. As you've heard already today, we have experienced a workforce refresh like many in the state, requiring us to increase hiring. Through our hiring efforts, it's become very apparent that we need to get more creative in our recruiting strategies, a lot of that having to be looking at the non-traditional shipbuilder because of things like not having enough housing in our region, in the Mid-Coast region here in Maine. We definitely turned to that more non-traditional shipbuilder, and our workforce has gotten a lot younger. We have more women in our workforce, and we're looking of having around 900 dependents currently under age 6 at BIW, which is roughly a $15 million workforce burden on our employees. Our ability to retain our shipbuilders through things like childcare is critical, and we believe expanding our childcare options with partnership to the YMCA will allow us to do so. We specifically chose the YMCA the Bath YMCA due to their location. They were able to expand through different phases in Bath, and then a Brunswick location that will be opening up on Farley Road in Cook's Corner. We also have loved the fact that they are able to help with financial aid opportunity, program quality, and supporting our shipbuilders in things like friendly shipbuilder hours and alignment with our production calendar. This expansion will allow for about 150 more slots, 120 being that Brunswick facility, and it's currently under construction. We're looking at that being opened in September of 2025, and super excited to see what that will mean for the future of our shipbuilders and Bath Iron Works.
That's excellent. It's exciting. Thank you, Kylie. And now I'm going to move to Dan. The United Way has been working on a really interesting initiative of which the Chamber has been a partner of, and it started, I'm not going to steal your thunder, I want you to explain, but it started with the United Way and the Chamber sitting there talking about this crisis we have with childcare and how it's this huge barrier to getting people into the workforce. So we, like we often do, we brought a bunch of employers around the table and we had a conversation about this, and we've actually launched this initiative. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dan to kind of explain about what we're doing and what we're hoping to see as an outcome of this initiative.
Yeah, thank you, Quincy, and good morning, everyone. And it's really impressive, by the way, to hear what Jackson Labs and Bath Iron Works are doing. Pretty phenomenal for their communities and their companies and their employees. So United Way of Southern Maine's mission essentially is to mobilize the caring powers of community. And what that really means is to be able to convene organizations from all sectors, to be able to tackle the issues that no one organization or the market alone can solve. And so today, as it has looked like for 96 years, it's housing, it's food insecurity, it's mental health, but it's also and has been childcare. And to use an incredibly technical term, we like to call it a mega issue. That was a very bad attempt at humor. So, but it is an interrelated issue with so much because we know that childcare impacts the ability of parents and other caregivers to be able to meaningfully participate in the workforce. And if we don't address the crises around affordability and accessibility of quality childcare, we know that there can be long-term impacts on the social and emotional development of children, and there are also long-term economic opportunity. So as Quincy mentioned, in June of 2023, United Way and the Portland Chamber that have partnered together so well for so long said, as we tend to do, can we convene partners together to solve a nagging question that's been persistent for a long time, which is the childcare crises of both workforce and affordability around slots for families who want to be able to send their kids to a safe, high-quality place. One organization can't solve it, and again, the market can't solve it. So can we convene folks to figure out if we can deploy an innovative solution to help add to the ecosystem and bolster it? And so through a series of meetings of local employers, the Chamber and United Way, using data such as what Kim walked us through earlier, some sobering data, we started to get momentum. And one of the data points that we looked at actually was we created a survey in partnership with local employers. And a little more than 2,000 individuals, as I recall, filled out these surveys at local companies. Several hundred indicated, I found this to personally to be the most alarming statistic. Several hundred responded and said that they have a partner at home who otherwise, several hundred responded that they had a partner at home providing childcare. 85% of those several hundred people said their partner would be working but for the fact that there isn't affordable, high-quality childcare. I don't even know if we could get 85% of people to agree in this room that the Red Sox are the best team in baseball or the favorite team, right? I mean, that is a staggeringly high number for a percentage. And so as a result of that, as we started to gain some momentum, we launched a new nonprofit called United for Childcare that is meant to add to the ecosystem and in fact partner, and it's wonderful with partnerships with Y and these other two communities, but a new nonprofit that is designed to bring online sites over time in Southern Maine that can work with other providers that already exist to be able to provide, in most settings, 24-hour childcare. Because one of the surveys results that we heard, and many of the local employers at the table provide shift workers. And the availability or lack thereof for childcare for the traditional format did not work for these employees and did not work for many of the businesses, which impacted their ability to retain folks. So we anticipate bringing online a site in South Portland in fall of 2025. We're cautiously optimistic of a second site in Freeport several months after that. And if Congress sees fit to provide for congressionally directed spending this year, both Senator Collins and Senator King have recommended funding to renovate a site in Biddeford to bring on childcare online there. And so these sites aren't yet renovated or aren't yet built, but it is meant to be additive. And the only piece that I think I'd want to end with is Kim mentioned through some of her data the workforce. What you can see on the left-hand side of the slide on the screen, thanks to the John T. Gorman Foundation, United Ways have been providing a bunch of data to talk about what it means to get by. Because we know that childcare, also decisions about it, aren't done in a silo. So we look at a basic survivability budget, and what you can see for Southern Maine for a family of four, two working adults and two kiddos in childcare, the basic survivability budget. It includes rent, utilities, childcare, and food, and so on. This is a conservative budget. It's not even about saving for retirement or wanting to go to a Hearts of Pine or a Sea Dogs game, as wonderful and inexpensive as those forms of entertainment might be. It's not a budget that has any room for disposable income. And you can see that childcare is the third most expensive cost for a family. And we often talk at United Way about rent eating first. What does that force for changes around childcare, the decisions a family has to make, and therefore the impact on an employer? So we're really excited. Stay tuned for more. Maybe it'll be the teaser, Quincy, for the next eggs and issues when we can bring those sites online. But
I was just going to say that thank you for sharing that summary of the United for Childcare initiative. And it's really exciting. I know the Chamber's so pleased to be a part of this. And I hope that next year we can be sitting here talking about the completion and the successes of those projects.
And Quincy, I forgot one quick sentence about it that is a hallmark of this. At the heart of this, we live in an incredibly generous community where companies here, I deeply believe, want to see what's best for their employees, best for their company, but also for community. And at the heart of this are businesses coming together to subsidize the slots that could be available for their employees and other members of the community. And that's what's innovative about the model as well, in addition to it being a 24-hour facility.
Great point to add, thank you. Now, a common thread through all three of your stories has been that of actually bringing the physical spaces to fruition, building the childcare centers. So let's talk for a minute about what the lessons learned have been through this process, and also how are you dealing with the persistent workforce shortage of childcare providers? And I will start with Mike.
Thanks. So the key lesson learned was to let the experts at the YMCA run the child care program. That is, I think, the number one. The Jackson Laboratory, Bath Iron Works, other employers were really good at what we do, whether it's building ships or decoding, the human genome or the mouse genome, I guess, in our case. So anyway, the experts of the Downey's Family Y, they were really critical in the design of the facility and what will be most appealing, most appropriate for child development, best to help attract their workers. And so we really felt it was critical in the beginning to indicate that the operating expertise should be with the YMCA and the facility expertise should be with JAX. The difficulty, as you highlighted, is of course staffing. We did, as I outlined, invest pretty mightily into the new center, very well designed, et cetera. However, the best design in the world doesn't mean that you're going to get an influx of new employees. And so we're running today at a shortage of employees. The shortage is so dramatic that for a period of time, like many other centers, we were unable to accept infants into the center. It was dramatic for a time that even in our own center that we built, we were still running a wait list for the youngest children to come in, and that was related directly to the inability to find staff. And so that's an ongoing challenge. I'm actually pleased to share a bit of good news that even since December, we've brought on 3 additional infants, and that sounds like a small number, but when it was 0 before, then that's a pretty major improvement. So it's slow progress moving in the right direction, and I think it really underscores the importance of the investments that the state has made and the risk in removing those investments to what is a very slowly improving situation. Let's not make it, more difficult.
Excellent point to end on. Kylie, I'll ask you the same question.
Yeah, I would definitely come off what Mike said. We picked the Y because of how talented they are in that space, and we are definitely leaning on them to be the experts. What I would say is unique and exciting about the opportunity of partnering together and this really being more for our shipbuilders' families is being able to have some unique benefits offerings to our mechanics and our families through Bath Iron Works. And some of those would be our shipbuilder hours. A lot of childcare facilities aren't opening early enough for our first shift to be able to drop off their kids. And so we've been able to work with the Y on not one size fits all, right? So how do we work with the Y, but also advocate for those shipbuilders on things like hours and our production calendar, as well as just programs that our employees will need and unique things to put investments into future shipbuilders, like we like to call them. I think really, yes, the challenge is the workforce. It's the workforce from a child care perspective, and BIW has been working hard to partner with the YMCA of Bath as well as Southern Maine Community College to create something called an apprentice program. This apprentice program will allow individuals to actually have on-the-job training at our Brunswick facility on Farley Road, and hopefully help them get more training, feel more invested, and support the location that we have there, but then also long-term continue to support the communities and just kind of engaging more and more people into that workforce.
That's great. And Dan, I know United for Childcare is at a different stage of the process, but what have you learned and how are you looking at staffing in the future?
Sure, I think one lesson learned is persistence, and on these issues of which they seem intractable, and if the status quo or the narrative suggests one thing, if you convene the right people and build trust, there's a solution that the future can be different. And I think that the 2 examples at Jackson Lab and Bath Iron Works, but also what we're seeing with United for Childcare, I think bears that out, in that if we can roll up our sleeves and work together, we'll be able to get some things done. As I think about the workforce and thinking about the needs, I think I would reinforce some of what Kim shared earlier in her presentation, which is the childcare workforce itself is in a precarious situation. And to be able to support them through policies that allow them to be able to get by, and as they think about the overwhelming majority of childcare workers fall into that household budget that I shared, where they are living paycheck to paycheck, trying to take care of other children and wondering themselves whether they're going to be able to make ends meet. And the anxiety and the stress that must come from that must be extreme, which I'm grateful that I don't personally have had to experience in thinking about what to do with my own children, say, and worrying about taking care of someone else's children. But also that there isn't going to be one piece that's going to solve everything. It's about pulling together multiple different sources. I can think of another program we run in partnership with Coastal Enterprises and the Southern Maine Workforce Initiative, which is called the Childcare Incubator. And it's about taking the next wave of entrepreneurs to get them licensed to be able to open their own childcares, whether in a family setting, whether in a one room, in a kind of renovated building, whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be this huge, full-fledged childcare center. And together, if we can take those pieces, we can start adding several hundred slots a line and bolster the larger provider ecosystem.
That is a great segue for my final question, which is going to be directed towards Kim, and that is, what do we do now? I know last week, first of all, I'll say the timing of this discussion is fairly perfect considering what's happening in Augusta around these proposed childcare cuts. And you may have seen that, I think it was last week, childcare providers went up in the hundreds to the State House to make their voices heard and to advocate against the childcare cuts. I think they did an excellent job, and I hope that they moved the needle on that. But Kim, maybe tell all of us, where should we be directing our advocacy right now over the next few weeks?
I appreciate that question. And I will say that made a huge impact, having the childcare workers, because it's their livelihood. And it's what some of them closed their childcare. They had a day without childcare. And they explained to the parents and the families that they were closing so they could go to Augusta and advocate for their livelihoods. And that changed the vote in the Health and Human Services Committee. They voted to reject those cuts that I talked about that the governor's proposing in her budget. Now, I know Senator Duson is here, and I don't know if she's got a better crystal ball than anyone else, but it seems to be the common wisdom is that we may be moving toward a majority-only budget in the legislature, which will have to happen by the 31st of this month, midnight on the 31st of this month. So we've got 2 weeks. I would encourage all of you to talk to your policymakers, your reps and your senators, and tell them that you think child care is important and that you hope that the legislature will reject the governor's budget cuts. And if they're an appropriator or in leadership, that's wonderful. If they're not, ask them to talk to their colleagues who are on the Appropriations Committee and the leadership, like Senator Duson right here. I often say to folks, if you use a sports analogy, the Health and Human Services Committee vote was huge, but that was the pregame. The Super Bowl is the Appropriations Committee, because that's where ultimately all the spending decisions are made. And so please reach out to your policymaker, tell them this is important to you and it's important to your businesses, it's important to your communities, and ask them to talk to their colleagues to see if they could agree to reject the governor's cut. And I understand, rejecting a recommendation from a governor is a big hurdle. It's a hard ask, but I think it's too important in my personal view from doing this work for 18 years now is that if this cut happens, we may decimate this sector of our economy, and that will have tremendous ripple effects in all the other sectors of our economy.
Thank you. And before we open it to Q&A, I think I'll just make one point to kind of drive home what Kim just said. As a Chamber of Commerce, we have like a whole host of policy issues that we get involved in. And I sound like a broken record, I know, but our top two policy issues right now are housing and childcare. So think about that for a minute. The Portland Regional Chambers of Commerce, their top two issues are housing and childcare, because we view those two as the biggest barriers to building our workforce. And out of all of the things that were in the governor's budget, and there was a lot in there that we probably could have voiced our opinion in opposition to, we decided to voice our opinion on one thing, and that is the childcare cuts. And we have been very vocal on those. So I think for a chamber audience, it's just important for us to drive home how important this is for a thriving and successful business community. So with that, I'd love to open it up for some questions from the audience. I see a couple over here.
Hi, I'm Allison Conley. I am the director of Spring Point Children's Center at SMCC. So I think that it's wonderful that all these spots are being opened with new childcare facilities, and that solves the availability piece for your employees. Are your companies subsidizing the cost to families as a benefit of employment, and or are you subsidizing the teachers' wages at all?
Sorry, I was waiting for someone to hand me the microphone, which is attached to my shirt. I think I have to start with this because we're the ones who are currently operating, right? So the answer, to be direct, is we're not. As the employer, we initiated the center by, of course, constructing it, or in the case, renovating it. I would say that additional subsidies or investment is certainly not being ruled out. There are, you know, one of the ways that we have supported the child care center is by covering really all the operating costs of the facility as well. So there are a number of things that we're currently doing. There's a number of things that we could be doing in the future, but you raised two very important issues that are certainly on our minds. We just don't have an answer specifically on those two things today. Yeah.
Other questions? Yeah.
Yes, good morning. I'm James Makenberg. I work for Penguin and Mainstream Finance as a business advisor. To the employers, do you ever keep a resource where you have a list of home-based child cares and smaller centers so that when you are full at your locations, you can help these businesses grow and develop and possibly expand?
Great question.
Yeah, absolutely. So we aren't up and operating at this point, but we have had conversations with other smaller daycares in the near area of Bath. We actually do hold and have kind of a list of that for our employees, and if someone's looking for childcare, we will send that out to them. We've got flyers, and we're very much about not necessarily our childcare facility, but are there other child care facilities that will fit people's families better, and who are they, and how can we get them connected, because it's an issue that 150 spots aren't going to just fill.
I'd like to add on to that because you raised a really important issue, and that is that childcare in the state of Maine is an ecosystem. And so the Jackson Laboratory, Bath Iron Works, whomever, can construct a facility. We could pay childcare workers a rate that is going to, you know, drive them to want to submit their applications to our center. However, because childcare is an ecosystem, we're very well aware that that economic activity may actually draw workers away from smaller centers. And so there is a very interesting dynamic that we as an employer have to be sensitive to and compatible with. You know, it's unfortunately, there's a competitive element that we don't want to compete with a smaller center. We don't want to cause them, you know, an economic hardship because of what we may be investing in. And so I think that underlines, because it is an ecosystem, the solution needs to be statewide. We can't have a solution that creates an abundance of slots for Mount Desert Island or Bar Harbor, Maine, that then draws away spots from Ellsworth or Hancock or wherever. It really does have to be a statewide solution to raise the economic opportunity for all so that nobody feels like they're shorted because somebody can do with their resources.
Quincy, if I could just add a resource that's available if you're looking to be able to find out in your area what a provider, if they're licensed or quality, might exist, contact 211 Maine. It's a 24/7 referral service for being able to connect people to resources, whether childcare or something else, in a given geographic area. If they're known, available there as well.
Yes, another question. There we go.
Hi there, I'm Mark Violet of Maine Mortgage Solutions. Really psyched to hear everything that you guys are doing. One of the things that's interesting that years ago I worked at Unum, and they actually have an on-site daycare center as well, so it's great to see that concept continuing today. One of the things that and this is just a food for thought, it feels like we're always so focused on costs and incomes, and wonder if that maybe the dialogue could get changed a little bit around return on investment. Because from a business perspective, that's how we typically always think about things. What am I investing and what am I getting in return for that? And I think if we change that dialogue, it makes the conversation a much easier thing to have. And so I guess just putting that on the table for the sake of conversation, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Bunch of questions also.
Yeah, I know. A lot of questions. Let's try to get a couple more in.
So many thoughts. I'm Bill Hager. I work for Catholic Charities Maine for our 2 child care programs. The first thought is one of the reasons that what Kim was talking about public response is so important is Maine is a state of small employers. So that the kind of work that Bath Iron Works and Jackson Lab can do, the vast majority of Maine employers can't do. So a public response to be able to spread the ability to expand across all those communities so the employer can benefit is really, really important. The second thought is in terms of return on investment. The other piece that wasn't mentioned was in terms of economics, is the cost that public schools are faced with for children coming in from inadequate preschool experiences. And I haven't the number in front of my face, but I've looked it up, and it is in the millions of dollars that we could be saving if children have appropriate early care and education. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Good morning.
Hi.
Lisa Church with KW Commercial. I had a client that was actually a daycare that had to close, and we tried to sell it, tried to have somebody take over. And so I got the inside of the daycares. And I also have my family of 4 daughter that was exactly that model of having to stay home and not work to make these decisions. My question to you is, this is great, everything you're saying. Is there any kind of committees or something we can be part of to really help with this? Because I have so many questions for more of what you guys are saying and how to actually fix this problem, or thoughts on it. So is there any way that we can help out more?
I mean,
Do you want to take it?
I'll just say, I mean, from my perspective, I think just the quickest thing we can do is advocate against these childcare cuts in the budget. That would be huge. So I think that's a very immediate need. And for lawmakers to hear from people in the business community as to why the childcare cuts are bad is very powerful. So that's just my very short-term answer to that question. And I don't know if there's other ideas from the panel.
I mean, it's a longer conversation, but I think part of the work I've been dedicated to for the last almost 2 decades is changing the whole culture of the public good and the public will for investing in childcare like we invest in our K-12 education. And that has to be incremental. We've started there. We're making some really great strides. But having folks think about children not in silos, not when they're the first 5 years of life, they're the parents' responsibilities. And then, then for 12 years, they're the public schools. Then they go into higher ed. But think of it, as you said, as an ecosystem, a whole system. But that's incremental and will take a lot. But just the more, I think we can help policymakers understand, not just legislators, but within the administration too, the importance of this. And I am so sorry for your client who had to close. We'll be back again. Yeah, it's just, it's heart-wrenching when you
Maybe one more question. Oh, I did not mean to step in.
No, that's fine.
Hi, I'm Danielle Gismondi, and I'm the training manager for Maine Roads to Quality, which is Maine's registry for all early childhood and out-of-school time providers licensed in the state of Maine. And all I'm here to say is I would encourage everyone in this room to think about the way that they talk about early childhood educators and out-of-school time providers. Childcare as a term is quite common. If possible, if we could get out of saying daycare. These people don't care for the day. They are truly, right? It sounds so silly, but these are people educating and caring for children. So just think about the way we talk about them, and this starts to change and shift this paradigm from just care to education. Thank you.
Do I see, Tommy, is there one more? I mean, there's like so many questions. This is amazing. But I'm going to do one more question, and then I do need to wrap it. But I will say, hopefully people on the panel are able to stick around for a few minutes after to answer questions. But we'll take one more question from the back.
Stephanie Millette from the Davis Family Foundation in Yarmouth, Maine. Beyond this political season, I wondered if it was possible, we've talked about it as amongst trustees from various fields, looking at the corporate employers who are in support of childcare wages generally increasing across the state. If it would ever be possible for these employers to come together and make some sort of statement to the state that if the wages were to be increased in the general field, that those employers are also committed to seeing the wages increased at the child care centers on their own facility sites.
It's a great point. That's something we will definitely, I think we can take a look at that. And this was fantastic. I'll have to say, this is probably the most engagement we've had from the audience. There were so many hands that were still up. So please, if you have questions, stick around after. We would love to answer them. And I just want to thank our panelists. Kim, thank you for being here and bringing your level of expertise on this issue.
Thanks for having me.
There is no stronger, more passionate, more engaged advocate for this issue than Kim Russell. So thank you for being here. And yes. Very, very well deserved. And Mike and Kylie, thank you for sharing your stories, and really for two major players in our business community in Maine, kudos to Jackson Labs and BIW for really taking this head on. I think employers can learn a lot from the work that you're doing. And Dan, thank you. The United Way, our partnership and collaboration between our two organizations has been incredible. And I am really excited to see where United for Childcare takes us. So I promise this group, we will be back here next year with an update, hopefully positive, on where things stand with the governor's budget and where it stands with United for Childcare. And we may have even more employers up here talking about what they're doing to deal with this issue as well. So with that, I want to thank all of you for coming. I encourage you to come next month. We have a really great presentation. I have heard these speakers before, and they are just out of this world awesome on artificial intelligence. They're from the Rue Institute. So I encourage you to come in April. And again, please stick around if you have questions. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next month.